Okay, hi. This is the notes for kites. Kites are the last type of quadrilateral that we went over in the first unit of this semester. So after kites, we'll be done with reviewing um, the quadrilaterals unit. So a kite is a quadrilateral. It's got four sides. A quadrilateral means it has four sides. Quad means four. Lateral means sides. So it's a quadrilateral with exactly two pairs of congruent consecutive sides. You could also say adjacent sides. So here, actually move this up top. So here you have two pairs of sides. So FG and FJ are congruent. They're consecutive or adjacent. They're next to each other. And then GH and JH are adjacent, consecutive. So you have here's one pair of consecutive sides that are congruent. And then here's your second pair of consecutive sides that are congruent. So you have exactly two pairs of consecutive sides that are congruent. Okay. And then we have three properties. So they have two drawn here, and then we're going to talk about then the third one. The first one is that the diagonals are perpendicular. It's been a week since I had to write with this thing. Okay, diagonals are perpendicular. That means that the two diagonals where they intersect, they form right angles. Perpendicular segments or lines form right angles. So in the middle here, you have a 90-degree angle. So your diagonals, FH and GJ are your diagonals, and they're perpendicular, so they form four right angles. So all four of these angles are right angles. So 90, 90, 90, and 90 in the middle. Okay, and then your other main property here is that exactly one pair of opposite angles are congruent. So this should be angles. You have one pair of opposite angles that are congruent. Okay, so it's either F and H or G and J, and it's going to be the angles that are between the two pairs of consecutive sides. So, and you can kind of tell by just looking at it, angle F is clearly going to be much smaller than angle H. And then G and J do look the same, but we can't just go by the diagram. By looking at by guessing and approximating on the diagram, you have to look and see which sides are going to be congruent. So here you have one pair of consecutive sides are congruent, and here's your other pair of consecutive sides or adjacent sides. So between those two sides are going to be your congruent angles. So in this case, or in this case, G and J. Okay, and then your third property here, which they don't have shown, but if we redraw this, right, you have these two sides and this side, and then you have F, G, H, and J. Okay, so this pair of angles is congruent, the one between the two pairs of consecutive sides that are congruent. And then the other one, F and H, those are going to be angles are going to be bisected by the diagonal. So those two are going to be bisected. So this angle GFH is going to be congruent to JFH, and then GHF is going to be congruent to JHF. So one diagonal, one pair of angles. So one pair angles is bisected. One pair of opposite angles is bisected by the diagonal. Right. So if we look at this first diagram here, again, just like we draw, those two angles are going to be congruent. And then these two ones are going to be congruent because angle F and angle H are getting bisected by the diagonal. These angles here do not, right? So G and J are congruent. One pair of opposite angles is congruent, and then the other pair gets bisected. So those are your three properties we're going to use. I do have a couple examples here in the notes Not sure why it was like that. I had it set up and ready to go. Okay, right here, problem 4 was the example we wanted to look at. Okay, so here we have a kite because it tells us the quadrilateral. Now the pen's gone too. Okay, so it tells us that we have quadrilateral DFG is a kite. Okay, so we know that DE and DG are going to be congruent, and then EF is going to be congruent to FG. Okay, if we go through our properties, our first one is that the diagonals are perpendicular. So since in a kite diagonals are perpendicular, you can put 90-degree angles for all these. These are all right angles. So all these angles here are 90. So we know that the measure of angle 1 is going to equal 90 degrees. Okay. They tell us this angle here is 52. Okay. We know the three angles of a triangle add up to 180. So we can do 180 minus 90 minus 52. Okay, and that's going to give us 38. So we know the measure of angle 2, m angle 2, is going to equal 38. Okay, this one right here is going to be 38. Okay, and then the other property we're going to use is that the diagonals bisect each other. So since, I'm sorry, the one pair of opposite angles is getting bisected. So it's the one, right, the one between the two pairs of consecutive sides, the angles between the two pairs of consecutive sides that are congruent are going to be the congruent angles. So E and G are going to be congruent angles. And then D and F are the ones that get bisected. So 3 is also going to be 52. Okay, so the measure of angle 3 is going to equal 52. Okay, because this diagonal here is bisecting angle D. Okay, yep. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, we have quadrilateral. KLMN is a kite. So here LM and NM are going to be congruent, and then KN and KL. Again, diagonals are perpendicular, so it's 90, 90, 90 in the middle. So the measure of angle 1 is going to equal 90. Okay, we know the diagonals bisect one pair of opposite angles. In this case, it's going to be M and K that are bisected. So 3 is going to be 36 as well. Okay, so the measure of angle 3 equals 36. Okay, and then we know the three angles of a triangle add up to 180. So we can do 180 minus the middle angle 90 minus 36. That's going to give us 54. Okay, so we know that the measure of angle 2 is going to be equal to 54. Okay, and that's it for the notes on kites. We'll do a walkthrough, and we'll also do a Google Meet if you need that too.